Hi again, everyone, and welcome back to Hope from Home, the show where we bring you conversations of hope from our home to yours. Today, we begin with Noel Okel's conversation with the Associate Editor of the Catholic Register, Michael Swan, who tells us how he's been covering the pandemic. After that, we travel to Rome, where Matteo Cioffi speaks with the Senior Vatican Correspondent at Zenit, Deborah Castellano-Lubov, who gives us an update from the Vatican. After that, Louisa Florentin speaks with the long-term care doctor, Stephanie Caffier, about the challenges that she sees in her work. We end the program with a book suggestion. Marie Anne Torres gives us the first of many suggestions to read during this time of self-isolation. And of course, they'll all tell us where they're finding hope from our home to yours.
It's good to see you, Dr. Caffier. You're a family physician and fellow Catholic. So before your maternity leave, you were working in the long-term care kind of sector. What challenges might your fellow colleagues and patients be facing right now?
Yes, so it's a very challenging time, certainly during this pandemic. I'm currently on the sidelines as I'm on maternity leave, but previously, as you said, I was working in long-term care. And in long-term care, there's many challenges, such as infection control. So it's very difficult to maintain people in their own rooms, for example, and because this is their home. So it's hard to have enough equipment for the nursing staff, the personal care workers, and it's also hard for people to maintain social distancing in a long-term care setting. So they're often together for meals, for example, for activities. So besides the fact that infection control is a challenge, staffing is certainly a challenge. There's a lot of staff who are becoming sick right now, so that's a big issue. And also social isolation. So in a long-term care home, people may have their family visiting, they may get to socialize with staff members or their friends, but currently they're not able to do that. So many homes have restricted family. And I think that's a huge issue because family are the ones who usually bring support, who bring sometimes food, who bring comfort items, who simply bring some hope to the residents. So that's a challenge to not have family there and to be isolated. And in addition, right now, when people can't get together for meals and such, they certainly feel lonely. They can't receive communion just like many of us can't. And the usual worship services aren't available. So all those things, from infection control to having enough personal protective equipment, to having enough staff, and to having freedom to roam about and enjoy each other's company, certainly pose challenges to people in long-term care.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot to really, that's a lot of changes that are happening right now. I actually had a few volunteer opportunities at long-term care as well, and so I can see how the element of community, of not having community right now, might be affecting everyone. So I hope that this ends soon, or people can find creative ways to restore that sense of community and belonging. So while you're at home, as you said, what are the ways that you're still able to support your other colleagues who are in the front lines right now?
So of course, most of us support each other virtually these days. So I've been able to support friends and colleagues through virtual support groups, with messages just checking in. And we have certainly groups that stay informed on the current evidence and what's going on. So it's nice to have a small community, even if that be a WhatsApp chat or a Facebook Messenger chat and things like that. The other thing I can do from home is advocate for my peers and my colleagues. So I try to do that for personal protective equipment and to encourage governments to certainly get that on the front lines and to encourage donations of that. So if anyone ever wants to donate things like masks or gowns, they're certainly more than willing to take them in care facilities, hospitals, clinics, etc.
You're wearing many hats right now. You're a mom, you're a family physician, and obviously a Catholic too. How are you able to balance the duties of that with, all the changes you're experiencing? I know a lot of Catholics right now are having to adjust to not receiving the sacraments in person or attending Mass. So how are you able to find that balance?
Yeah, it's a unique time. I didn't expect my maternity leave to look like this, I'll tell you that much. But it's had unique challenges. Staying at home with small children is certainly challenging, but very rewarding in many ways. And it's allowed me to have the gift of time. So time with my children, time with my husband who's been working from home. So that time together as a family, I think, is very precious and something we take for granted because we don't normally get this much time together. In terms of what we're doing, it's easy to get lost in the loop of the news, I think, and to get completely consumed by the negative news stories, how many people are dying, how many people are getting new cases. And I think as Catholics, we have an opportunity to be making a choice and to be making a choice to be hopeful, which I know you're speaking about in this series, but it's a choice to be positive and a choice to look at things optimistically. And every day, I think we have to wake up and make that choice. So it's not just, I'll be positive for a few minutes and then I'll turn the news back on and then look at how dire the situation is. But it's, okay, every decision I make today is I'm going to try to make it for a positive note to improve the lives of my children, my husband, and my family and friends as well. So that's a deliberate choice I think we can make as Catholics to look on the bright side as if we can, and despite the difficult circumstances. I've said before, if as Catholics we're not positive and hopeful, then who is? So how can we share our faith with other people if we're not joyfully living in this time of challenging circumstances? And that's not to say to put everything aside and say, oh, we're not suffering, but it's to take our cross and to look at the positive aspect of what's going on and to say, okay, we have many blessings, we have gifts, we have time together, we have opportunities to go for a walk, to appreciate nature, to clean our homes, to bake bread, and many things that people have been doing in their homes that maybe they didn't have time to do before. So the change of mindset, I think, is vital, and it's one I would encourage other people to do certainly as well.
Yeah, certainly it's very important to, as you said, have that deliberate choice to stay hopeful and to spread hope too, to not just let it end on ourselves. So beautiful. There's a lot we can say and find out scientifically surrounding this virus. But how do you think, just on a spiritual aspect of this time, how do you think God remains present even in this pandemic?
This time of challenge, this time of difficulty has allowed us to turn to Christ and turn to God and say, okay, God, it's in your hands, and we can't control the circumstances, but we can control how we react to them. There's certainly, it's even small things. I went for a walk with my kids this morning and we saw this big, beautiful heron, and it was this gorgeous bird that was huge that I've never seen so close before. And then we saw it again, and it was even closer the second time. And just appreciating how beautiful that was allowed us then to say, oh, thank you, God, for that opportunity to see this majestic bird. And then we ended up going on a thankfulness walk. So we kept walking and saying, my daughter, who's 3, was saying, thank you, God, for the grass. Thank you, God, for the trees. And those little things, those moments, those God moments, if you will, are quite beautiful because they allow us to appreciate the little things that maybe we didn't appreciate before. So during this time, I don't think it's a time for us to do extraordinary things. We're just lucky sometimes to get by, to survive. But it's a time to certainly appreciate the little things. And in the words of Saint Mother Teresa, to do small things with great love. So that's what I would encourage people to do during this time is do the small things. Find God's love in the smallest things that you have in your home or just outside. And to appreciate those right now and to carry that forward with you once this is all over as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful insight. I love the idea of a thankfulness walk too. I think I will start implementing that on my personal walks when I take my dog out. But yeah, I think one thing that I've learned from just talking to you is, obviously, like I said, you wear a lot of hats right now, but it's so humbling for me to see how graciously you respond to your duty of the moment right now, which is to be home with family and to really maximize this, time right now, even though we're all in quarantine and we're all in self-isolation, to find those God moments, as you said. And so I hope that I don't know how much time you have until you return back to work, but when you do, I hope that you can inspire your colleagues and your patients to find those God moments in this difficult time. So thank you for having this lovely chat, Dr. Caffier, and I wish you all the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. God bless and stay well.
Hello, Michael Swan. Thanks for joining us from Toronto.
Thanks very much, Noel.
In your experience, your many years of experience in covering Catholic news, in what ways do you think that the church is going to be changed by this pandemic?
There's a lot of interesting moving parts to that. I was telling you earlier about how I'd done this feature about the Black Death and how the church came out of that. And one of the interesting things is that a whole bunch of parts of society changed because a traumatic event, much more traumatic than what we're going through. 30 to 50% of Europe's population died. Okay, so everybody you knew died. Your parents died. You were alone. And then you begin to question things, question old verities. You question the feudal system. You question the authority of the church. And where are we 100 years after the Black Death? The Reformation. And a 100 Years War and a great ferment of change in how Western Christianity conceived of itself and projected itself in the world. The interesting thing I think about our current situation is that the church isn't the dominant institution. That people are going to come out and say, well, where was God? Where was the church? We were failed by these institutions, because nobody looks to the church to be the institutions that save them, right? Where do people put their trust in our culture? Capitalism. We live in a market economy. And I think we're going to, at the end of this, and even now we're seeing a lot of people question a competitive market economy. It doesn't seem to deliver healthcare, as the American experience seems to show. It doesn't seem to care for people in a meaningful way. It seems to throw people aside. And that's, of course, Pope Francis's insight about the throwaway culture. So if people begin to question the way our economic system works and how they claim a place in the world within that economic system, the question is whether the church is going to be ready with some answers for them. Is the church going to have a proposal for a different way to relate to each other and to organize ourselves? Or are we going to stay on the sidelines? I haven't done that. I don't know.
One question I was just thinking about, do you think that everything that's happening is going to force the church to be more pastoral in the future?
Oh, I think that that's what the Francis papacy is all about. I mean, when he talks about the field hospital, when he talks about getting out on the street and getting dirty, when he talks about getting out of the sacristy, that's what Pope Francis has been talking about all along. That movement is underway. It is resisted. It is resisted in some very powerful corners. I mean, I'm not just talking about, the sort of the crazy extreme right of the church. There are a lot of bishops, there are a lot of institutions that really would rather stay in the sacristy. And this crisis, it could go either way. You could decide, yeah, Francis was right. We're sitting ducks here. We'll die in the sacristy. Or we could decide, no, put up the barricades, hunker down. It's us against the world.
I guess time will only tell.
Time will only tell. I just don't think there's going to be a decisive moment where we can say, yep, Francis won, or no, the Action Institute won.
Yes, yes.
It's not. It's a gradual process.
Yes. Well, one last question I have for you, Michael. This has been a very difficult time for a lot of people. But what gives you hope personally during this time?
I would say that the one sort of thing that sort of gets me through a lot of this is the sort of discipline of a prayer life and the discipline of work that comes with my very privileged position, having a job actually that engages me with the church, right? So yeah, I get up in the morning and I say my round prayer, and I'm able to focus on why I'm there, and not what I get out of it, but how I make a contribution.
Well, listen, Michael, thank you so much for sharing those stories and ideas. It's always great talking to you, and also thank you so much for all the great work that you're doing at the Catholic Register.
Well, thanks very much. And we'll do this again, right?
We'll do this again soon.
You bet.
Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Deborah. It's a big pleasure to have you here at Hope from Home. First of all, how are you, and how did the lockdown change your daily work?
Thank you so much, Matteo, for having me. Yes, no, luckily I am doing well. My loved ones, my immediate family in Rome is doing well. Some relatives of ours, of my husband's family further north in Italy, had contracted COVID and were even hospitalized for about 40 days. But one in particular who was very vulnerable, he recovered and was able to be released on Holy Saturday, thanks to many prayers, we are sure. So we're very grateful and truly blessed as well. In terms of my daily routine, obviously things have changed, but luckily as a journalist, as you know well, we do have a lot of ways that technology enables us to work and cover papal news regardless. So I've been able to still follow the Pope's many events and what's been going on in the Vatican.
I would like also to ask you to speak about the situation around the Vatican. To explain to our viewers how the situation is, the streets, Via della Conciliazione, so the atmosphere, that's pretty strange for sure.
Absolutely. It's empty. You don't see anyone other than police and homeless people around St. Peter's Square because they don't have a home where they can be. That is their home. So I generally work from home. I don't really go out, but occasionally when there have been times where I've needed to go into the Vatican, the Holy See Press Office, which is also empty, but open from 11 to 1 occasionally, I go there. But for some of the Pope's activities, which have changed dramatically as well, because now it's very much a streaming Pope because the Holy Father is Angelus, Regina Caeli because we're after Easter, but the general audience, his masses at Santa Marta, all streamed. So he's been being close to everyone virtually, but the streets, in the beginning, it was kind of eerie. Now more people are coming out, but everyone's masked. Every so often you see a cardinal who you greet on the way, but basically very, very empty. But the way the sun still comes down in the square, you could still tell that God is there.
We know that, and we read actually, that the Vatican and Pope Francis did already a lot of things. Buying the ventilators, sending masks, giving money actually to the hospitals in Italy. But sometimes all this news, all these things are not well reported, and we can say that. And your comment about this?
Yes, no, Pope Francis from the very beginning has been very active in taking measures to react to the coronavirus pandemic, even before almost anyone realized how huge of a problem it would be worldwide. From the beginning, he sent masks even to China to help. In the meantime, as the problems started to grow larger, he even instituted under the Vatican's dicastery for promoting integral human development, a specific commission or committee to look at the issues caused by the pandemic and those that will follow in its aftermath, and to look at 5 key areas. So the Vatican has really been on the forefront of trying to look into how to help, especially as many governments around the world truly are not sure or are taking very different approaches on how to handle this.
The last question is about something new, something just happened. And we know that the bishop from US and Canada decided to dedicate May 1st to Mary, Mother of Church, to consecrate their nations. And, your opinion about this?
Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful because maybe it does take sort of an emergency of this nature to really remind us how important it is to look to the Blessed Mother and to have her intervene with her son, because really it is our faith that will be able to work miracles. And I think I've noticed that when looking at Italy's death rates over the past couple of weeks, it's been Easter Sunday and some of the following Sundays where the death rate was actually much, much lower than the other days. So to think the day of the resurrection was the first time the number was lower, then as you look at each Sunday, you really do see a trend, which is I don't think it's just a pure chance. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Holy Father, there's obviously nothing confirmed, there's nothing being spoken about. He did encourage specific Marian prayers for faithful for this month of May, but he may do something, I don't know, maybe he could make an excursion or make some sort of gesture like he did for during March and other points of April. I was there for the extraordinary Urbi et Orbi in St. Peter's Square that rainy night when he prayed for an end to the epidemic. So he's been making little gestures. So I'm keeping my eyes open in case all of a sudden this month of Mary, we don't know.
Deborah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to share, these minutes with you. I really hope to see you soon because it means that something better is coming, and I hope to see you soon at the Sala Stampa, the Holy See Press Office, I don't know, in a few weeks, hopefully.
I couldn't agree more, Matteo. Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. So now that we're at home all day long, it's the perfect time to find that next great read. I'm a book lover myself. I love to read all the time whenever I can, and so I thought I'd take this opportunity to share with you books from my personal Catholic collection at home that I absolutely love and would highly recommend both during this time and long afterwards as well. And so that being said, I'd like to introduce my first recommendation, which also happens to be my last read, for Mother Teresa, an authorized biography by Catherine Spink. Just a little bit of backstory on this book. It was actually given to me, or lent, by my good friend in my youth group. I was over at her house the other day, and I was talking about finding good books to read. I was on the hunt for a new book. Long story short, she just jumped up, ran to her room, and came back holding this book, and suggested I give it a chance. And so from then on, I've had this book at my house, but I have to admit that the story doesn't completely end there. The book is at my house, I leave it on my desk, and it stays there for quite a long time. The reason being that I'm just not sure if I really want to give it a chance. I trusted my friend a lot. I knew she was a reader as well and that she'd probably have a good taste in books. But I just couldn't get over the fact that the word biography was on the front. I pictured a biography that was like a little distant, a little like cold, and just compiled from a bunch of news reports that were found over the years. I just wasn't really sure how much I could get out of reading a biography. Long story short, a lot of time passed, and I really wanted to have a new read. I really wanted to, learn a bit more and see what this book could give me after all. And so I gave it a chance. And long story short, I was absolutely blown away. I love the book to pieces, and that's why I'm sitting here recommending the book to you. And so what made this book so great is that it's not written by just anybody who just wanting to write a book. It's actually written by people who knew Mother Teresa very closely. Catherine Spink herself met Mother Teresa on numerous occasions. She also wrote the book with the help of those who were very close to Mother Teresa during her life, who worked with her very closely. These include her spiritual director, fellow missionaries of charity, and just friends from around the world. And so because of that, this book is just so intimate and so personal and offers a very, very close look at who she was. Instead of a biography, I would really call this book a collection of stories about who she was. And these are stories that you don't really have access to very much, that not many people know about. Everybody knows about the Nobel Prize, everybody knows about the calling, but what's found in here is stuff that's truly rare and very precious. And so that being said, there's also a ton of sticky notes found throughout the pages, as you've probably been able to see. And the reason for that is the stories that are shared are just so beautiful and so personal. And they really capture the things that Mother Teresa said, her convictions, and these things are just so profound and so beautiful. And so I couldn't help but just sticky note the entire book. There's actually a point when I thought I was gonna cut back on sticky note marking, but it looks, as you can see, that just didn't work out. So yeah, so there's sticky notes everywhere. I assure you, you can turn to any page in this book and just be blown away by what you read, by how profound it is. I was telling my coworkers at Salt and Light the other day that one page in this book takes 10 minutes to read. And that's for me, and I tend to read pretty fast. And so if you get ready, long story short, to read this book, just be prepared to take notes. Be prepared to write stuff down, to mark the pages. There's no way you're going to get around that. That being said, I also wrote a blog post on this book back in March. You can find it on the Salt and Light website under the blog section. Within that blog, there's also a link to where you can purchase this book online if you'd like to do that. Yeah, and so that pretty much sums up my recommendation for Mother Teresa, an authorized biography. If you read it, I hope you really enjoy it. I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy it, but I really hope you do. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to share the rest of my book collection with you over this time. Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks so much, Marie Anne, for your suggestion. I'm always looking for a good book to read. Okay guys, that's all for today. It's so good to hear from Michael Swan. We forget that, in a way, journalists are also on the front lines, as we rely on them to bring us the information that we need. And Catholic journalists, like those at the Catholic Register and Zenit, have a great responsibility. And what did you think about Louisa's conversation with Dr. Stephanie? Are any of you also working in hospitals or long-term care centers? How has your experience been? Share your stories with us by following Salt and Light Media on all of our social media platforms and commenting with the hashtag #HopeFromHome. If you missed any part of the episode and you'd like to watch it again, visit our website, saltandlighttv.org/HopeFromHome. We hope that these stories inspire you to stay positive and remind you that we're all still connected through hope.